Very good. All right, so we're live. Okay, guys. So it's 8 o'clock. Um, 4th of February. You can hear I'm totally out of voice. I had something that really impaired my speech. Anyway, so I'm going to be lower in voice tonight, a bit lower than what you used from me. I hope you bear with me. We have a very, very interesting subject tonight, which is all about burnout and how do you deal with that. So, normally, let's just welcome everybody who's coming in, who is still joining us. We have some people waiting. Let's see, we got Bob Melkus. Bob, welcome tonight. It's great to have you. Then we have On Bando. That sounds like a bit French, perhaps. Welcome. Patsy is back again. It's great to have you again. Rebecca Finn, welcome. Rivandi. Sher Muhammad, okay, good. I think you just joined us in Meetup. That's great to have you. We got Tracy and we got Swedelina. Beautiful name. Okay, guys. So we're here tonight live on Zoom. We're also on YouTube. We're on Facebook and we're on Instagram. So my name is Erik. You could probably tell by my accent. I'm not Irish. I'm not English. I'm actually Dutch. I'm from the Netherlands. Been moving around. Left my country about 25 years ago. My background is in engineering, and I've been basically roaming around the world, different places like Latin America, Caribbean, Scandinavia. Now it happens to be Ireland since almost 3 years. And one of my passions is actually to pass on information. So we're going to do that again tonight. Now, before we get started, maybe you want to do a quick introduction. Let's do a quick round of introduction. You usually have always the same questions, which is like, where are you from? And why are you attending this webinar? So maybe you have a specific reason that you're here tonight. The chat is wide open. Just use the chat, put something in there. If you're a fast typist, you may want to put where you're from and why you're here. If you're a bit a slower typist, just put where you're from, and that should nicely get us acquainted. So I'll give you a minute and then we're gonna kick off. There's still people trickling in. I see there's still some people in the waiting room, so it's all cool. And there we go. Svetlana, I am from Bulgaria. Lovely. Okay. I hope I'm pronouncing your name correctly, Svetlana. And Sher Muhammad is from Pakistan. Wow, that is amazing. Patsy, you are from Galway. Yes, exactly. I remember that from last time. And then we have Rebecca Finn from Dublin. Amazing, very good. Okay, there might be a few more answers. So, this whole thing about burnout is actually quite interesting. You can look it up on the internet. There's a very interesting website which is called Etymology Online, and etymology is, it tells you where the word originated, where the word is coming from. And I actually love looking up etymology. I'll give you a crack. For example, you think of, for example, a cesarean section. So, and it's like, you know, it's not a regular birth, but it's actually a surgical action where the womb is getting cut open by a surgeon and the baby is being delivered that way. So why would you call that a surgeon? Like, why would you call that a cesarean section? And you look it up on the etymology, and it says it was believed that Julius Caesar was born that way. In other words, these origins, they will give you a lot of conceptual meaning of what a word means or where it comes from. And likewise, you have something for burnout. So in 1972, it was referred to as a drug user. And why would they use that for a drug user? Because it seems like you would burn out. You would take some fuel, quote unquote, fuel from the street, and you would burn it until the fuel is exhausted. And that basically originated in 1972. Now, so you would burn the fuel until it's exhausted. So let's say you have your own energy, right? And you burn that up to the moment that it's actually gone. There you have the burnout. Good. Now, if you look a little bit further and you find out what are the main symptoms, then you get a number of interesting things that we're going to cover tonight. And one of the things that people are dealing with is actually the workload, the amount of work that they're dealing with or that they can't seem to deal with. And then number two would be lack of control. And number three now, just to get a little bit of your feedback, so we have a couple of symptoms here, a couple of things that are going on that are attributed to that burnout, which would be having too much of a workload, having lack of control, or number three, having lack of reward. Now, if we just call them 1, 2, 3, I'd be very curious to hear from you. What is the thing for you in particular that you're running into? Do you feel that the workload is too much for you? Or do you feel that you're not really in control of doing the things that you need to do, that you should be doing, or that you even want to do? Or do you feel that there is a lack of reward? So that's my first question for you. All right, good. So let me see. We got. Let me see. I'm just gonna go back a little bit more. So Rebecca was from Dublin. That's great, Rebecca. We're in Dublin 24, so it's great to have you. Ombendo from Tunisia, and you're based in Austria. Lovely. Okay. So Rivandri is from Indonesia, but Malkus is from Stockholm. You found it in a meetup. Sounds interesting. So you want to see what it's all about. Great. Okay, fantastic. Ganesh. Reddy is your name. I'm from India and working as a staff nurse in Ireland. Okay, good. Fantastic. Yeah, we have a big Indian community here in Ireland, right? It's amazing. And what I really find amazing with the Indian people is you guys seem to have a good work ethics, right? You don't really find Indian people that are loafing around. They're self-employed, they're nurses, they're lawyers, they're doctors, they're dentists, and of course there's a lot of people in IT, right? So hats off, that's well done. So let me see, Rebecca says, I'm here for the workload, okay? Or I'm running into too much of a workload. Swendolina as well. Okay, so we seem to have something in common here, right? Which is workload. Okay, good. Let's keep that in mind and tailor-make something here tonight on that aspect. Now, if you say workload, let me just clean the whiteboard quickly. There's basically two factors at hand when you're saying burnout. There's two factors. There's two things going on at the same time. One is a mental factor, and the other thing is a physical factor. And there's an interaction between the two. So we're first going to address this point, yeah, this interaction between your mind and your body. So now the first thing that I want to do is just do a little drill. And what I would like you to do is just see if you can remember primary school. So I want you to think of primary school and see if you can actually, in your mind, see the building again. Perhaps you can see the classroom again. Right? Maybe you can see the playground again, where you would play outside or had your break times. Perhaps you can see the entrance, where you would go into the school or the exit. So if you got some pictures flashing by, then let me know. Let me know if you actually got to see some pictures, some recalls, some memories. You can just answer yes or no in the chat. That's all perfect. But I'm just curious if you actually got some mental images there, some pictures. Likewise, maybe if you didn't get anything for school, then let's try a pet. Maybe at some point you had a dog, you had a cat, or you had a hamster, or you had some kind of an animal. Maybe you had an animal at home. So maybe this will just get you back to one of these moments where you were letting the dog out, or you have a picture of your animal, right? Your pet animal. All right. So everybody says yes, very clear, fantastic. Patsy, yes. But Marcus says, okay, I can't really do that. I have a fantasia, so I can't visualize. Okay. Well, here's you know, Bob, we're gonna do something funny. Thank you for bringing it up. Actually, we'll demonstrate that there is something there. It might be, so to speak, seemingly behind some kind of a curtain, or behind some kind of a filter. But let's just take this to the next level. What I would like you to do, everybody, let's do this funny drill here. We've done this many times before, so people, if you've been here before, you know the drill already. Nevertheless, it's always a fun thing to do. Let's imagine that you're sitting in your favorite chair in the living room. Now, if that is the case right now, then I would like you to go back to a previous house, any previous house, maybe a house where you grew up as a teenager or a child. So let's imagine again that you're sitting in your favorite chair in the living room. All right, now if you have that, what I would like you to do is I would like you to extend your arm, use your middle finger, use your index finger, and then point out to the TV. If there was a TV over there, you just say, all right, the TV would be right there. And you would simply know that there was a TV. You can look at the TV, you can see the size again, you can see the shape again, you can see the color of the TV again. If you have that, maybe you can also see what it was sitting on. Maybe it was sitting on a dresser. Maybe it had some drawers. All right, now, if you have that, let's see if we can find a window. Any window in that room. For example, if I would go back to my childhood, I would say, well, there's a humongous window, like 4 meters wide, right in front of me, like 5 meters away. And there would be a window actually on my right-hand side, a bit behind me. All right, now finally, let's see if we can actually find a door. And from where you're sitting, just point toward the door. I would say, well, I got one over there, and I got one over there. So here we go, Bob. Were you able to do this? Maybe you didn't get a picture right away, but did you know where these objects were positioned in the room? Yeah. In other words, there's two things here that you can do. You can either see a picture, and some people have a full vision, but if you don't have a picture, then you might be able to just tell where these things are. All right, Bob. Okay, good. So you can feel them, you can't see them. All right, that's great. So basically what you're telling me is that you can perceive them. You can perceive them, right? Now, there might just be something that it seems like it's blanketed. This is a specific phenomenon in the mind, can be handled. It's nothing special. Yeah, so we understand, but you still have that knowingness. You have the knowingness. In other words, you know the TV was over there. There was a table over there. There was a window over there. That window had blinds or it had curtains. If I would go to the back, I would have a door. I would walk to the kitchen. These kind of things. You would know that. So that means that you do actually have pictures. So let's just do a little sketch on the board. So here we have your body. And there we have your mind. Okay, I apologize, I gotta drink something. All right, so there's your mind. Your mind makes pictures. All right, now, so Bob, everybody else, you just looked at primary school, and you just looked at the living room again where you, let's say, grew up, or one of the previous houses where you lived before. So you looked into your mind, right? You looked into your mind. You actually looked at some recordings. You looked at some memories. So here's the question: Did looking into these recordings, and I'm referring to these specific ones, the ones that we just looked at, did that cause any discomfort? So did you feel any discomfort looking at these pictures? That is the question here. So we just inspected a couple of pictures, primary school, a pet, what have you, and just some memories, just some recordings. So did you perceive any discomfort, like a certain emotion might come back, like an emotion of fear, or an emotion of rejection, or an emotion of hate, or an emotion of sadness, perhaps, or an emotion of feeling upset? Okay, Svenlina says no. All right, Patsy, I suppose that is a no. Rebecca says okay, a little bit. Good. Thank you for the answers, guys. Okay, good. So we basically just looked at some very, very neutral recordings, some very, very neutral memories, right? So it just tells you that all these things that we experience in life, they are being recorded in the mind. And by the way, if you want to know more about that, then there's a booklet I highly recommend, which I will recommend again at the end of the webinar, which is called Dianetics, the Modern Science of Mental Health. It's actually a manual on the mind. It tells you what the mind is. It tells you how the mind works. It tells you what causes stress and unwanted feelings, unwanted emotions, what limits your potential, and how you can fix that. It's a very unique book. Okay. So now, here's the question. What would happen if you would think back of a moment of loss? Let's take a sudden loss in your life, or some painful moment. What happens when you think back of a loss or a painful moment in your life? So for me, for example, this is a question, I would like you to answer, put something in the chat as an answer on that question. What happens when you think back of a loss? Do you feel like an emotion is coming back to you? Or for example, when you think back of a painful moment, do you get a sensation of pain? I used to have that back as in my childhood, teenagehood, when I would think, for example, of a blood test, going for a for a blood test, and I would just imagine that I might feel that needle again in my arm. I would actually get that stinging sensation. So I would think of something like that, and I could actually feel that kind of pain in my elbow again. And of course, when you have dealt with a loss of a person that you really loved, or let's say an animal that passed away that you were really fond of, you might get some grief again. All right, so Ganesh says nope. Okay, Svenlina says yes, I do feel a bit of painful emotion. All right, let's see what the other guys will say. In the meantime, we're just going to make a little bit more space. So basically, a lot of people would probably understand that these images, these recordings that we make, they have a lot of information in them. And emotion is actually recorded as well. I could ask you, can you recall a moment that you felt really happy? It might take you a little bit to get such a moment, but eventually you'll have the moment. You'll have the moment where you've felt really happy. I could ask you, well, can you remember a moment when you felt really sad? You'll find out that emotion is part of these pictures, of these memories, has been recorded. Now, likewise, pain is also recorded. So, and it has a function. Let's say, you probably noticed this as a child. Maybe you put your fingers in a door opening, and you had a door closed on your fingers, right? And of course, that was very, very painful. So now you have this mechanism, you have that recording there, that you will not do that again, because you know what the consequences will be. And likewise, you may have burned your hand on the stove or on a very hot object, and from experience, you now know that you better be aware when you put your hand near a stove that might still be on or hot. All right, so Rivandi says, I feel heavy at my chest. All right, Rebecca says, when I was younger, I got bad knots in my stomach almost every day. And I know I feel grief or loss in my adult life. Patsy says, anger. All right, good. All right, so good. So that kind of emotion has all been stored. And usually what happens is this. We think back of it, we go back to it in our minds, and we can, like, who said that? Like Rebecca, yeah, you get that knot in your stomach, you get an anxiety stomach, or something like this. Now, all right, let's see how this plays out in real life. So let's say we have Joe here. So Joe obviously has memories. He's got a bad memory there. Where Joe was bitten by a dog. Happened many, 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 many years ago. But he got bitten by a dog. And this was a ferocious dog, just ripped open his arm. He was losing a lot of blood. He went unconscious. He almost lost his life. He had to go into the hospital, get surgery. You know, wakes up at some point with all these scary people around him, and they're putting needles in his body and what have you, and they're stitching him up, and he's not feeling well. And that is all recorded. That's all recorded over there somewhere in his past. Okay, so Joe still has that memory. Now this is past, and now Joe is in present time. He's going down the street in that direction. And all of a sudden, Joe sees a dog that is a bit similar to the dog that appeared in a bad experience. So now, how is Joe's mind going to respond? What do you guys think? How is Joe's mind going to respond in this kind of situation? In other words, what do you think that Joe will do? What do you think will happen to Joe? Is Joe's mind going to dictate him to do something? Is Joe's mind kind of like commanding him to feel a certain way? what do you guess is going to happen? Okay, all right. So as what Lena says, okay, he will feel scared. Michael Sheridan's there again. That's great, Michael. It's awesome to have you. You'll feel the same emotions as in the past experience. Awesome. All right, I like that. Patsy says he will panic. Okay. So it's an interesting phenomenon that will happen right now. And this is this automated mechanism that we have. You have the door closed on your fingers. Now you have a recording. You shouldn't put your fingers there again, or else you will know what the consequences will be. You'll be in pain. You burned your hand on the stove. Now you have a recording of it. And you know you shouldn't do that again, or the consequence will be that you get burned again. Right? Okay, Patsy, that's all right. We'll see you next time. I was happy to have you here. That's great. So, what happens here is that the pain is recorded as a force. In that incident. And the emotion is also recorded. So if he was scared to death, then the recording holds a being scared to death emotion. All right, now here's where the mind will make mistakes. Joe's mind will make the mistake to identify this dog as being the same as that dog. Joe's mind will say that present time is the same as the past. Joe's mind will say that this condition, this situation, is the same as the situation in the past. And obviously, that is irrational. And you can see right away why that would be irrational. This was not a sweet dog. It was a ferocious one. This one might actually be a very sweet dog. But Joe's mind will insist that it's another ferocious dog. Now, to make matters worse, Joe is going to feel that force again. If you talk about a knot in the stomach, you talk about an anxiety stomach, butterflies in the stomach, what have you, it's a kind of a force that is controlling. So Joe will have the same kind of an emotion again, an emotion of fear, and he will feel that his body is controlled in a similar way. So there's two things that happen at that moment, which is some kind of a sabotage. It's like the body will be sabotaged at that moment because right now it's under an intense stress. And the mind will also be sabotaged because Joe is going into a blank, and the only thing that he can see is fear and some kind of a disastrous outcome. In other words, he cannot think rational at that point. So, in other words, and this is very key, is what Joe is not doing, he is not facing or confronting the dog. Really, he is actually introverting. He's introverting into his mind. So in that kind of a situation, it is as if he is looking at this instead of looking at this. Are you guys tracking? Does that make any sense? So in this situation, Joe's mind sabotages Joe. It puts him under stress and duress. And it demands of him that he has a similar emotion. And it's kind of like he's reliving the earlier moment in time. It's like he's totally absorbed by this, which is to say, he's not really having all his attention on the dog over there. Does that make sense? Rebecca, you're tracking, right? Say yes already, so I guess you are tracking. I'm just going to wait for a few more responses. So I want to point out a key thing here. And this key thing is this. So somewhere in the mind, you will find bad experiences. Right? So when a person thinks back of such a moment, even inadvertently, we call that introversion. And that word actually makes total sense, because intro means within, version means to look. In other words, it is to look within. I'll give you a simple example. Let's say it's 9 o'clock in the morning, and you and your partner, you have a quarrel, you have a fight. Normally you give each other a hug, and you give each other a kiss, and then you leave for work. Now instead of that, you have an argument, you have a fight. Okay? So let's say now we are here at noon. Let's say it's 12 a.m. One of these person is here now and is trying to focus his attention on his computer at work. Well, is his attention really on the computer, or is the attention still on what happened in the morning? So what do you think? Would the attention be at work, or would the attention be at whatever it was that happened in the morning? Well, that makes kind of sense, yeah? All right, so basically, that means he is still looking at what happened earlier. He's still looking at the bad experience, and that means it actually takes the person back in time. He starts to introvert. So we're going to have a little bit of a look on that. Okay, so now there's two things that we do in life. We either face a situation, which is to say we're confronting it, and if we don't, then we start to look inside. So let's say you want to talk to your boss. Okay, well, maybe you're able and you can just make that decision. You leave your chair and right away you headed for the boss. You knock on his door and you ask if you can see him, if you can talk to him. Now with that, you could say you would be able to face and confront your boss. You'll be able to face that situation. If you have any second thought, if you have any consideration that maybe he doesn't want to see you, maybe it's not a good time, maybe you need to practice before you can talk to him, maybe you need to make an appointment, or any kind of stop that stops you from going into that action, is basically not confronting and is basically putting you to think. So there's the two things that we're dealing with in life. So okay, for example, you want to talk to your boss, you want to handle your salary, or you want to handle the hours, or you want to go on holidays, you want to get something done. You want to get something done, you want to have something, and you need your boss's help. So you confront, you face your boss. Now here's an interesting thing. If you can face an individual, if you can face a situation, then you can handle. That's the first thing to observe. So you can think of a number of things that you can handle in life, that you can do. And you're getting results in these areas in your life. You feel confident that you can handle these people, you can handle these situations. And that is because you can face them. Now, if you cannot face these people, if you cannot face these situations, then you will not be able to handle it. And you will not get results. Instead, what will happen is that you will start looking into your mind for solutions. You want to look for solutions. In other words, what is going to happen now, you're going to get some introversion. Now, the bad news here is that when you start to introvert, you most likely run into some negative thoughts, because the negative experiences, the bad experience in your life, have also been recorded in your mind. So that is that's the difficulty here. So now maybe you had these thoughts like, I can't really do it. I'm just not good enough. I need more experience. I can't really talk to this person. Or any kind of self-invalidating, self-nullifying thoughts. Have you ever run across that? That you felt like, no, I'm not good enough. I can't do that. It's better to do it later. I shouldn't be doing this now. Did you ever run into this kind of like negative thinking? Okay, let me see where we go. Still reading on the previous comments. Thank you guys. I should have been acknowledging you for the comments. That's great. All right, so here, when we go into that introversion, you run into I'm not good enough. I can't do it. Negative thoughts. Have you ever seen that? I'll give you an idea. Maybe at some point you had to do a speech in front of a group of people, and you felt that at that moment that you were not in control. You had this anxiety stomach. You started to transpire, to sweat. And your legs were kind of shaking. You had a paper, but you couldn't really hold it still. You kind of like forgot what you wanted to say. In other words, you were not really in control anymore. That would be an introversion. Okay, good. So let's just move on. I'll just take it that that is kind of clear, right? So here's the main thing. If you can go straight, if you can face a situation, if you can face a machine, if you can face certain work, if you can face people, that basically you can handle things. Now there's an interesting thing. Let me just look at my notes quickly. All right, so we're going to take the next step. Now, when it comes to workload, it means that we're going into action. We have to do something. Okay? And when we're talking about doing things, we can just imagine that there's certain action cycles that we have to go through. And that would be something like this. We simply start something, and then we continue, and then we stop because we have the result. So you could say, well, that is a cycle of action. Any cycle of action follows that pattern. You start something, you continue with it, you change, you go through various changes, and then you stop because you have the end result. So very simple. You could make a cup of tea. All right. So you're deciding you make a cup of tea. You start by putting, let's say, water in a kettle. Now you heat it. You're going to go through a process of change. The water is boiling. You put the water in a cup. You add a tea bag. And you finished that cycle of action. Another one could be, for example, very simple. You're driving to work. So you get into your car. You turn the ignition. You start driving. You maneuver your car around. You park it in the right parking spot. You arrive and you have finished that cycle of action. Or let's say in the morning, every morning, it's a routine. You give your partner a hug and a kiss. It's a very, very tiny, very, very brief cycle of action. You approach your partner, you give him or her a hug, a kiss, you let go, and you go off to work. It's a very, very short cycle. Now, let's see how that could actually go wrong. All right, so let's say you want to make a cup of tea. For some reason, you cannot finish making a cup of tea. In other words, you will not get the end result. Maybe halfway to boiling, it's an electric kettle. You have a power shutdown. Or for whatever reason, you cannot finish this cycle of action. Now, I want to ask you, how will you feel when you cannot finish that cycle of action? You start something, you want to continue, but you can't seem to finish. So what will happen to you? How do you respond emotionally when you cannot finish making a cup of tea? Maybe Bob or Michael, or Rebecca, or Ivandre, Tracy, Svetlina. Let's see, guys. What do you have to say? Okay, Svetlina says you're frustrated. Michael Sheridan says, okay, frustrated. All right. So what, for example, thank you, guys. What, for example number 2. Let's say you just started driving to work, number 2, and you're nicely moving around, and all of a sudden there's an accident on the road and you cannot finish your cycle of action. You're probably going to feel the same way, right? Or even number 3. Let's say your cycle of action is to hug and kiss your partner. And you cannot finish that cycle of action. You'll probably be frustrated again, right? So basically, all these are examples of open cycles. So everything you do in life is a cycle of action. We're starting a webinar, we're ending a webinar. It's a cycle of action. You are participating from the beginning till the end. It's a cycle of action. You turn on your computer, start, and you do a number of things, and you turn it off. It's a cycle of action, right? So you can imagine how many cycles of action you have at hand. Now, it's an interesting thing. Some people have the idea that they cannot start. Oh, I can't talk to the boss. No, I cannot give any directions or instructions to my colleagues. Oh, I could never ask the customer for an order. Like, you cannot start. Some people can only start but can never change. You probably know the people who are full of ideas. They dream up this thing and they dream up that thing, and they got a bright idea to do this, but they will never go into the change part. Now, likewise, we just had a look at, what would happen if you couldn't finish it. Because in order to get your cycle of action fully done, you need to be able to properly stop it when the moment is there, right? Okay, so now there's an interesting thing. Let me see if I can use the other side of the screen again. no, I guess I have to wipe it. Okay, so let's see. In the meantime, so remind it is stressful, overthinking. Rebecca says sometimes I'm too afraid to start because of the impending feelings, like the knot in my stomach. There we go again. Yes, exactly. So it's a little bit off the cuff tonight, but why do I bring up this stuff? I bring it up because most of you said at the beginning of the webinar, like the workload is too much. So if the workload is too much, you basically have a problem with your cycle of action. That means that you're facing a couple of conditions here. One is you might find it very hard to start things. Now, remember, to start, you have to face or confront a situation. Now, if you were able to face or confront, you wouldn't feel any discomfort, because discomfort is only entering in when you cannot confront. And if you can face and if you can confront, you will not have any discomfort. You will not have any nervousness. You will not flinch. You will not be irrational. You will not keep yourself down. You will simply face the situation, confront it, handle it. So if you can do that, you can definitely start. Most likely, you can also change and stop. In other words, you can actually start with the task that you want to do and finish it through. So, but it has got everything to do with confronting. Now, if we go back to the example with the dog, like there's a dog over there that reminds me of a dog in my mind, and now something is controlling me and I start to feel very uncomfortable. And then this kind of situation is happening every time when you feel that you cannot face or confront a situation. In other words, you will start to introvert, which is to say, looking into your mind. However, you will not find answers there except for more worry and more stress. The other thing that happens is that every incomplete cycle only makes it worse, because you have your attention on these incomplete things. But let's say this morning you couldn't give your partner a hug and you couldn't give your partner a kiss. You would still have your attention on that incomplete thing. You have things to do at work and you cannot really face or confront them, so it ends up being incomplete. And that actually starts to build up more and more stress in your mind. So at some point, it's going to be full with incomplete things. And we get into the situation that you know that it should be done, but it isn't done. And that piles up on all the bad experiences. So now we got the bad experiences plus the incomplete cycles of action that you're running into, and it starts to really weigh down on you. And that, of course, is what gives you a lot of mental fatigue, because you know in your mind, oh gosh, this is what I still need to do. Oh, that's what I still need to do. And before you know it, you're in a big confusion because you have a lot of open things that you still need to do. Does that make any sense so far? All right, so you guys are tracking. Okay, beautiful. I love it. Now, so I just want to ask you a couple of questions here. So this is the workload, yeah? This is the workload. It basically tells us that if you could improve, if you could increase your ability to handle people and situations in life, it tells you right away, if you can do that, your quality of life will improve a lot. That is one thing. So you could definitely work at raising your level of confront to handle people and situations. There's another thing that you can work on, which is basically, and this is the big discovery in Dianetics, and that discovery is very unique. These things, these charges, these uncomfortable moments in your mind, they are lined up as a sort of a chain of similar incidents. So let's say there's a chain of similar incidents. Now, what was discovered in Dianetics, in the book that you will read about, that is the book on the mind, what was discovered there, that if you find the earliest moment on the chain, and you can just talk it over with somebody that's a good friend of yours, if you learn the technique, if you find the earliest moment on the chain, you can actually erase the painful or negative or destructive, self-destructive content of that whole chain, and take all that negative energy out of your system. Now, you can imagine that if you have let's say you're carrying around a rucksack of bad experiences, and you have a technique to find what's at the bottom of those bad experiences, then your whole rucksack will disappear. And undoubtedly, you will do a lot better in life. So you can train to face and confront. You can also work on your mind and get the negativity out of your system. All right, now I have a last question before we're going to end off tonight. I meet a lot of people who are very unhappy, to be honest. And I know that because I evaluate personality tests. And I can see that a lot of people don't have a lot of hope about their own future. They see the future grim. They're lacking hope, they're lacking confidence. Quite often people have no direction really in life. So I just want to touch upon a little thing here, which I think is very related. I'm going to give you a couple of scenarios that has to do with happiness and unhappiness. All right. So let's say we take Joe again. Now let's say Joe really has direction. He really knows what he wants to do with his life. He wants to know what he wants. He knows what he wants to accomplish. He knows what he wants to get out of life. In other words, he really has direction. Now, having this direction, would that contribute to happiness, or would that contribute to being unhappy? What do you guys think? Joe has direction. He knows what he wants. All right. He knows what he wants. He knows what he wants to do. He knows what he wants to accomplish. And knowing this, does that contribute to his happiness, or does it contribute to being unhappy? Well, I guess Svetlina has already had the first one. Yes, it contributes to happiness, because here Joe has direction. He knows that he wants to go from here to here. Now, if he would not have direction, he would probably go in all kinds of different directions. And every time it's a kind of like a hit and miss. So if he doesn't have direction, then he's going to be dispersed. Okay, so that would be the first thing to know more about. Now, number two, now let's say you do know what it is that you want to accomplish. However, you're running into barriers. There's certain situations that you find really difficult to face. You find it really difficult to confront. You're running into some kind of a barrier. So let's say when I was younger, I had this phobia to make phone calls. I had this strong desire to reach out to everybody, to make a lot of friends worldwide, everywhere. I wanted to make friends. But I had this weakness. I had an absolute phobia for being on the phone, making phone calls. I just could not do that. It was so bad, I would not even call the hairdresser for an appointment. So I ran into a barrier. And you probably can recognize this. There's probably barriers in your life where you feel like, I just can't confront it. I can't do it. I mean, I get this knot in my stomach right away. I start to shake. I lose control. I don't know what to say. Does that sound familiar? Do you actually run into barriers? Things in life that you feel you cannot really face or confront. Have you ever run into that? Maybe you actually knew what your goal was, but then you felt like, gosh, I keep on running into the same barrier. All right, Michael says, yeah, okay. Procrastination, for example. Yeah. And it's exactly that, Michael. Procrastination is like, I can't confront it. So maybe I'll do it tomorrow. But then tomorrow is, well, I still can't confront it. And it's the kind of things that there's something behind it, like you really want to do, but you can't seem to do them. And you run into that barrier. So that is going to make you unhappy, right? Now, it will be, the direction would be number one. Barriers would be number two. Now, quick question. Quick question, number three. Have you ever had that thought where you would say something like, where you would think something like, if such and such wouldn't have happened in my life, I would be happier today? Have you ever had that thought? You ever had that thought, if such and such moment wouldn't have occurred, I would be happier today. I'd be happier today without it. Okay, yes. So these are usually painful moments, losses, traumatic moments, and so on. And it goes like this. It goes like this. Here's vitality. There's time. That's how much life you have versus time. And it goes quite all right for a while. And then something happens, and your happiness just crashes. And you move on from that point. And maybe you want to rebound. Maybe you want to get up again, but you simply don't know how. So your life continues henceforward from that moment. That would be number three. Obviously, that contributes to your unhappiness, right? Now, there's one more thing. There was this key thing. Thank you guys for the answers, Svetlina, Rebecca, Rivandi. There's one more key thing that came up on the internet, which is the lack of reward on the work floor. Now, there's people who will lift you up, and there's people who pull you down. So you meet your friends, and it's an uplifting moment. And you're, let's say, I don't know, you have an antisocial individual around you, or a narcissist, or what have you, and this person is constantly pulling you down. Now, so if you're amidst uplifting people and wants to pull you down, then the last thing that could happen, number four, is that you're doing ups and downs. And your life will look a bit like this. A roller coaster, an emotional seesaw. So all these things basically will just contribute to that burnout feeling. Now, fortunately, all that can be remedied. So you can actually find your direction. Let's see how amazing life would be if you can actually really find out what it is that you innately want. That will give you a lot of power, right? Let's imagine that you get these barriers that you have in your mind resolved. And you get the pains and the losses and traumatic experiences resolved. And you will no longer be bothered with ups and downs. So to that extent, there's actually two books I definitely want to recommend tonight. So like I said before, Dianetics is one, which is the only manual on planet Earth that tells you accurately what is the mind, how does it work, how does it hold you back, limit your potential, causes you stress, causes you to doubt yourself, and all these other things. and most importantly, how to permanently fix that and get it out of your system. There's another book which goes all into the problems of work. It comes from the same author who did all the research on the mind. Actually, by the way, the person is appears 4 times in the Guinness Book of Records. It's the most widely read author of all times. So he wrote that book. He analyzed, what is the thing that people are running into. And to just give you an idea, this talks about, for example, on what does success depends. How do you handle confusion? How do you gain more control? How do you raise understanding between you and other people? How can you predict the behavior of other people? How can you, come up with the best decision in any given situation? How can you handle tiredness and exhaustion? And the final chapter of the book is on the one who succeeds. Now, I want to make you an offer tonight, and that is that a poll will come up. Maybe some of you guys will say, all right, you know what? I'm actually quite interested in these books. Show me the books. I'm quite interested in reading and learning more. Maybe you're not so much of a reader, and maybe you feel like, okay, good. I would like to have a personal chat with Erik, which is myself, and we can totally do that. It will be at no cost. It's going to be free of charge. And maybe you just feel like you want to talk to somebody. You want to know more. You want to get some answers. And that's what we're here for. I will be very, very happy to do that for you. Yeah. So I think we had a poll in the making. Is that right, Dita? I forgot to announce it tonight. Well, there is the poll. Okay. So, and it says here, I would like to get the self-help books package. Okay. Actually, the package is going to pop up, but to give you an idea, that one is 20 euros. And the other book is 17. I believe that we had a kind of like a special, because the book also exists on film, and we decided to give away 2 films tonight for the early buyers. That is to say, like, there's a promo in the next 15-20 minutes, half an hour, for the people who are deciding tonight, and the first 2 are actually going to get a film, which is a DVD, for free. It's got an 18 euro value, so we'll toss that in for free. Now, otherwise, if you're not too much into reading and you want to have a personal talk, I'll be happy to do that. I hope my voice allows it. I've been trying to keep it myself really down tonight, but I guess on the phone it would be even better. And are we popping up the link tonight, Dita? People can, okay, good, fantastic. So I guess you guys can actually see what it's all about. All right, so now I'm going to read just in quickly what was said. All right, Rebecca, so you're running into that. Lack of reward makes me feel I'm not good enough. That's totally right. That can absolutely happen. Okay, good. Awesome, guys. Now, is there any question before we end up? I'm sorry I'm taking more of your time, but on the other hand, I see that everybody stayed behind, so that's great. Is there anything that you want to comment? Is there anything you want to ask? I see that somebody is quite interested in the book package. That's great. And somebody's also quite interested in having a talk. Amazing. All right, guys. So people are already disappearing from the chat. Okay, I've been keeping you long enough. I want to thank you so much for being here tonight. It was great having you. I love the participation. It was fantastic. I hope next week my throat is handled. So for now, have a very good rest of your evening, and I hope to see you again soon. That is either tomorrow for the Mind Explained or next week, Tuesday again. All right, guys. Thank you so much. Bye.